Hello, welcome everyone to Deliver 101. This is the top 10 tips for Deliver organization. And we are your hosts. I'm Amanda Johnson. I am a senior Slate strategist at Carnegie, powered by Underscore in our Slate optimization division. So I work with partners on their communication campaigns, reporting, a couple other things that you're going to learn about in this session. And I will hand it over to Nick Porcella, who's also with us.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Deliver 101 session. As Amanda said, I'm Nick Porcella, Slate Communications Strategist with Underscore, and looking forward to talking with you all about our top 10 tips for Deliver organization. So I think Amanda covered the introductions nicely, but we'll go over the top 10 Deliver tips, keep this agenda nice and easy, and then we'll get to our Q&A. So Amanda, if it works for you, I'll get us to our first slide here.
Absolutely. All right, so first up, let's put a label on it. So some of the things that are most important when you're starting your instance, or maybe, we're in the summertime now, you're looking at those drip campaigns, kind of your instance as a whole, and saying, where can we refresh and update? So Nick, if you'll go to the next slide, the first thing that is really important when looking in Deliver is your folder structure. So you can see a couple of different examples here, kind of how we're using subfolders. This is one feature that I really love about Slate, just having the ability to nest things like this within subfolders. What we recommend is having a folder or subfolder per funnel stage. So as you can see, the one on the left, you can see we have some underclassmen search folders. We have anti-melt all the way down to senior search. And then the campaigns within those folders are going to be all emails related to that. So they can be the emails that are on drip and are associated with the population, but also any responsive or ad hoc emails that pertain to that population that you're using for that campaign. So as you can see on the right-hand side, the events looks a little bit different. So we have all events for 2022 and then broken down into subcategories. Thinking about it like this also helps looking how this is a setup for how you want your reports to look, really. So how you want those to be nested, how you want to show your data in reports, because it's really, really easy and helps long-term to keep up with your reports if your folder structure is nested in this fashion. So always think about how you want your reports to be displayed as well. And then on the next slide, we talk about population naming conventions. So this particular convention, you can see that the population rule on the left-hand side houses the year of that population or the year of the students that we're communicating to. And on the right-hand side, we've just typed in what the actual population is called. So Nick's going to cover at the end refreshes and how we look at those and the timing of that. But this is just some insight into start your populations without the year and then put the year in the rule. One big reason for this is because populations can be active or inactive, but it just kind of clouds up the instance when we keep creating new populations. And then I believe the last one here is the actual naming of your mailings. So I do see a lot of partner institutions, label them with the topic that's being covered or the CTA or something like that. But with Deliver, again, this should be a reflection of how you want your reports to show. And what we can do by naming them this way, so you can see number 1, 2, we have opener emails on this. This helps in our reports show just the actual number of the email, the order it was in the drip campaign. And then we can add exports to our reports to show the subject line or form submissions, anything like that that might be pertinent to that particular campaign.
And now that we've checked in a little bit on some of those introductory pieces of Deliver, we're going to spend a little time on some foundational tools within Deliver that you all can use to either try for the first time some of these great options within Slate, or if you're maybe an expert already, learn more about the best ways to use these areas. So the very first thing that we really encourage our partners to use is Slate Print. This is something that I always encourage partners, if you haven't used it before, or maybe you used it a year ago, a year and a half ago, and there weren't a ton of options available for you, I really encourage, take a look again. Slate Print is one of those areas within Slate that is constantly adding options. opportunities for different size print pieces, different customization options, segmentation. So go check it out if you haven't again. For those of you who maybe haven't used it, just a brief tutorial on how you get there. It's not the most intuitive. You do have to go into Deliver and create a new mailing that is Slate Print as the method. When you do that, you're brought into the module where you can edit the mailing. And in this top image here, you can see when you click Edit Message, it gives you the option to click Manage Templates. That's how you get into the Slate Print portal through Kelmscott. And so again, not intuitive, but once you're there, there's a few things to note. You'll have to set up your account if you're a new user. So that's a two-part process. I know one of those pieces Amanda will cover shortly. But you'll need to create an account within the Slate Print portal itself, which you'll just do here on the left. And that will ask for things like contact name, USPS nonprofit authorization number, etc. What's great about Slate Print is what you see here on the right is that along the way, as part of your process, it will tell you the total cost, expectations for production, different options for how to make the mailing really pop in the mail, whether that's UV coating or different sizes. I have one partner recently who actually was able to use a sticker postcard. So it's this lovely 6x9 piece with a nice sticker in the middle. So something fun. So if you, again, moral of the story, if you haven't been in Slate Print for a while, definitely go check it out. A couple other new areas within Slate recently, video and voice within Slate. Both of these are features that you do need to activate within the database. So you can do that by starting in database and actually going to configurations. You'll simply click on configuration keys, which is this top left image, go to early access features, and then you can enable all 7 or 8 of these as Underscore has done. But chiefly here, you'll want to enable Slate video and voice. To start with voice, there's a couple approaches you could take to this. Voice is great if you want to send maybe voice messages to a student, or if you want to call a student directly from their timeline. Note about Slate Voice, for example, is it does take Slate credits. So it's something that you'll need to load credits in to your Deliver configuration. Again, something I think Amanda will be chatting about soon. But to get to Slate Voice itself, you do much the same as Print. You go into Deliver, select New Mailing, and then as your method, just select Voice. What that does is this bottom middle image that allows you to record a message that then gets sent to students. On the bottom right here is also another way to access it. Was not enough room on this slide to include a student record, but within each student record, if you click on a mobile number or a number in general, you'll get a few options, and one of them is for Slate Voice. Maybe fewer use cases for this version of Slate Voice, but you can call students directly from their timeline, and it does a nice job with actually logging that interaction. So maybe not something as useful, and again, it does cost Slate credits, but we like Slate Voice in terms of that quote unquote robocall feature. And then finally, a more fun version of me here is Slate Video. So another thing you have to enable, but Slate Video is a really, really superb way to include video in messages and then have it link out to your branded Slate pages. The advantages here are actually quite a few. For one, you can better track the data in terms of who clicked on these videos, how long did they watch for, how many times did they watch the video. One thing to keep in mind is if you're using Slate Video, the videos you record within the edit message in Deliver, you need to do them then and there. You simply access it once you've enabled that new feature with this button on the edit message window that is at the bottom. It's that little camera icon. So if you click on that, it'll allow you to record that video and it will automatically embed into the mailing itself.
Amazing. Perfect. I love the fun version of Nick. So as we go into toolkit number 2, there's many things we wanted to put in the top 10. So we just combined some of these, but this first slide is the configuration within database. So in that messages section, you'll go to deliver configuration. And this relates to what Nick was talking about with loading Slate Print credits. You also load SMS credits here. So if you have been texting students and you're starting to get into Slate Print, there's often confusion on, kind of where those credits come from, how they're loaded, but they are loaded in the same manner. You just apply them toward your Slate Print account that you would set up. So at the very bottom there, in those little blue letters, you see add account, and you would go there and the type of service you would select would be print. So once you have everything else set up, this is just where you add those funds, and they do deduct from that same kind of bank of funds there. And then the next couple relate to how we can track some of these things that Nick has talked about, as well as things in your deliver messages. So one of those is ping. I have come to really love ping. Once you get going on it, it's such a powerhouse tool within Slate. So again, within database, you go to configurations, that configuration keys. And then under one of those settings is the embed ping on Slate pages. Something to note is that the default behavior of this is disabled, actually. So one of the first things I tell partners, and our implementation team mentions it as well, for them to go ahead and enable this feature. The longer ping is turned on, the more powerful it's going to be for you. So this particular one will turn on and enable ping for your Slate pages. And then you have the option to embed that script below there. So every institution within their instance gets a customized script there to be able to load into the back end of their web pages where they want to track ping behavior within their institutional website. So it's kind of two sections of this, but once both of those are turned on and you have the script on your website, we really can look at all kinds of data. It helps us see matched and unmatched students there. So this goes, one of the main things that matches it is an IP address for a student. We could talk about ping forever, but just know that this is where it lives. This is how you turn it on. And for just starting out, or if you have not yet done this, definitely go to those configuration keys and enable your ping there. And then the next one is UTM tracking. So we use this all the time with our partners in deliver mailing. So this helps us track form conversions from a specific email. Oh my gosh, so many different types of things. We get very specific with the terms that we put in here so that we know what types of email content your students are really engaging with and are helping them move through the funnel. So we set these up below within Deliver. So when you click on that new mailing, the UTM tracking, again, the default is that it's disabled. So if you just select enable from that dropdown, it'll expand all of these fields and you'll be able to put these things in. You may want to work with your marketing department on what UTM codes might make sense with them. This is, if you look at Google Analytics or do anything with that, it's kind of similar. So kind of getting on the same page institution wide to have some sort of naming conventions is helpful, but we align these with the actual drip campaign that we're doing for that campaign section. And then the content is our email number. And then the term, again, is really either that CTA or the topic that we're pushing towards students.
So an alternate title to this next section could be one of these things is not like the other, because this is actually a section where we're going to share something that we don't recommend doing. So set and forget, but actually. This is actually speaking to the image library within Deliver. We see a lot of partners, who maybe have used Slate for several cycles, begin to think, oh my goodness, like my image library is just chock full of all these images. They're all over the place. And very few of them will actually start moving things around and refoldering, renaming. Do not do that. Again, for the record, do not move images in image libraries. This is the set and forget, but actually. Once images are within image library, they need to stay where they are. So this advice that we're about to give is in one of two scenarios, either for partners who really haven't added a lot of images at all, you're just starting, or if you have a lot, maybe you begin now with any new images you add in or foldered, named what you want them to be. So no worries if you haven't been doing this, but the main lesson here is don't change things if you already have a pretty robust image library. The first part of this is much like Amanda spoke to on that first section, foldering and just keeping things organized. We have 3 samples here taken from some partner institutions. The one on the left you see is a really great representation of how you could folder within image library. In this case, we have a folder for underscore, and then we have all the campaigns. So we've got images for anti-melt, for 3 search campaigns, and yield. And they're all broken down by campaign. A couple ways you probably won't want to do it. We'll actually start on the far right is images. You just have them all in one folder. Makes it hard to find things. You could have hundreds, if not thousands, of different images that have names that are just a series of numbers. It makes it hard to find things. And then this middle example as well, the folder idea is great, but the folders themselves are not super organized. We have people's names, which is not great if you have someone leave an institution and maybe you can't find an image. We have projects, portals, templates. We have a testing folder. So not super organized. So again, as much as you can, either if you're starting fresh or if you'd like to start this moving forward for a new campaign, for example, test out foldering them by campaign or some other means. And now what I said a few moments ago still holds true, that don't move things once they're in there. We have some partners who will, really in a good effort. This is not malicious. They're trying to go in and clean up their folders, and they move a lot of images around and rename them. It breaks the path to any of those emails that the image is home in. So what you might see if you move something around is this beautiful red X image that we had one partner see, that when you click OK, brings up this non-existent image now because there's no path. So more of the story here is start fresh. If you've never done this before, try something new if you're, in Slate for a lot of cycles, but don't move things around if they're already there.
Awesome. All right, number 5, halfway there. So we're going to go into a couple of the slides about templates, if you can see what we've done there. So these are templates that our creative team has designed. Very, very talented creative department. Super proud to work with them. So a couple of things when you're looking at your templates and implementing those. So in Deliver, you will see that you have a templates folder already. One use case for this, or the use case really that this should be used for, is just institution-wide approved templates. So again, you talk about this with your marketing department, designers, vendors that you're working with, but those templates should kind of have the layout of the design and images and CTA buttons, social media icons, things like that are going to be used within email. So in the top left here, we have that header for details and then the footer right below it. And of course, we would put the email copy in between with a button or two, maybe some images within it, depending on what content they come up with. But it's really important to have those templates approved, because once you copy the template, you do a new mailing and you assign an email template to a new mailing, you can adjust as you would like. So for example, you can make that button, instead of say visit, say deposit, depending on what your CTAs are. So we'll go through a couple of other examples if you want to flip for me, Nick. So these are great examples of templates. A lot of headers and footers kind of displayed on here, but you can see that some of those headers have an image that does not have a logo overlay. We do try to design some of these for our partners so that you can use them to your heart's content, mix and match images, use these templates for years to come. We also use liquid markup to display different header images sometimes. So there's a lot you can do there, and some strengths for not having a logo overlay on a header image. And then the footers, you'll notice too that we have the addresses in those footers. So again, this is a great place to have social media icons, other calls to action, ways of contacting, but it is a requirement of the CAN-SPAM Act to have that address somewhere in all mass marketing communications. So this does not apply to emailing a student right from their record, really just those drip campaigns and anything you're doing in mass. That address does need to be visible. So we have implemented it for our partners where we're taking care of that and displaying it within footers. Another tidbit that I'll just tell you while we're on the topic is that you can go to message groups within database and add the address to your unsubscribed message group there as well. And that will take care really kind of all emails as well. But the next one is some newsletter style templates. This is just a great idea to have on hand. So if you have an in-house designer or vendor that you work with, these are some examples that our team has created for those newsletter styles. So when a template like this is inserted in your templates folder, you're able to kind of drag and drop these containers. So whether it's an image or a block of text, that countdown one I love to use a lot. So countdown to events or deadline reminders. You really can mix and match these newsletter templates to be able to delete sections that you're not going to use, or add them back when you do want to use that, and kind of make a more fully designed email.
Switching gears just a little bit, an area within this session that we easily could spend an hour on alone would be liquid markup. And I know there's a lot of folks who are interested in this. We had a lot of questions submitted beforehand. We're going to give you just sort of a primer to liquid markup, and we hope that that will encourage you to sort of go explore a little more on your own, and maybe go look in knowledge base. So we're happy to take questions on that. But the foundation of liquid markup is what you see here at the top. It is a string of code that you add to an email that can conditionally show certain content. So I'm going to walk you through just a couple really basic, entry-level examples here. The code itself is curly bracket, %, if the field equals, in this case, yes, %, curly bracket, and then your ending code there is, similar with the end if in the middle. But what you're basically seeing here in the R demo section in the middle is conditionally showing the phrase "I love donuts," which is a true statement about me. So basically, what you're seeing here is under our demo would basically read as if Nick is yes, show the content "I love donuts." Ta-da! I usually like to do this in the code itself. My goal for next year would be to offer a session on HTML and source within the WYSIWYG, a fun word, within Slate. So that's coming to a theater near you soon, next year. But for now, don't be scared by the code. It's really just, the HTML to help you, figure out, where is your text and such within the email. And you can just rely on that the text will be in black within the code. So in this case, I put in the liquid markup before and after the phrase "I love donuts." And what that's going to do when I exit out and go back to the mailing is Slate automatically highlights it. This is new in the last few months, is that Slate has been turning conditional logic, which is that little if icon, into the markup for you. So when you exit out and see the yellow highlighting, that's a good sign. You're on your way. What this now actually does is, for me, if this email was going to me, you can see on the right here, merged field, Nick is yes. Look at that. We see the content, "I love donuts." Whereas if we were to show Amanda, Amanda would be N for no. Amanda is no, there'd be no content there. But I do know Amanda likes donuts, so hooray. So now to backtrack a little bit, how do we actually get this started? This is most frequently done with an existence export. So you go into your recipient list, and in this case, we're going to go to the far right first, and you can see this icon with that little switch bar called existence. That pulls up this middle section, this middle part. And the best way I can think to show this is that I have a colleague with a very similar name to mine, Rocco Porcellio versus Nick Porcella. And we're going to do a little experiment here with those two names. So in this first case, for the first existence export of the two, those are circled on the left. You can see for the first one, I've put in my name as the name. I've put in Y for yes, if exists, and N for if not exists. And the particular filter I've used here is just last name contains, and it's my last name. One quick note, this is something that really can be up to your institution for the value if exists and not exists. We tend to recommend pick one naming convention for your institution. Here, within the Slate optimization team within Carnegie, we use Y and N for yes and no. If your institution wants to use the words yes and no, feel free. Make sure they're case sensitive. It's really up to you. But we recommend Y and N because those are just easiest for everybody. But in any event, what this actually now looks like is if we make this one layer more complex from the "I love donuts" example, You can see under our demo, we have basically what reads as, if Nick Porcella is yes, show the content, you might be Rocco's cousin, and end that. But if you are Rocco receiving this email, if Rocco equals yes, you might be Nick's cousin, end the phrase. What you have here now are on the bottom left and bottom right, what this actually looks like. So in that first example on the bottom left, if the merge field is me, if I'm the one receiving this email, and thus I equal Y or yes, I receive the content, hey, you might be Rocco's cousin. On the right, however, if you're Rocco and Rocco equals yes, you will receive the opposite text. You'll receive, you might be Nick's cousin. The jury's still out on whether this is actually true. This is something we're looking into, so we'll figure that out later. But for now, just a really brief example to show you the power of liquid markup. I would definitely encourage going to Knowledge Base to check out the article. You can get very much, very deep into liquid markup with else if statements and all kinds of fun. I love liquid markup. It's more than we can cover in, even just an hour.
Awesome. We will just suspensefully await that verdict there. So number 7, not exactly blockchain. So before we go into this section is going to be on content blocks. These are formerly known as snippets. So if you see that within Deliver, on the right-hand side, there's a table of things that you can click on, and one is content blocks. And I believe they still have snippets in parentheses, but all that to say, those are going to be something that you really a block of content that you want to insert into your email based on some sort of logic. But this is going to be something that's larger than liquid markup. Maybe we're replacing an entire email copy with this. So prompt structure is the first thing to look at when you are wanting to do content blocks. This is really important when looking just how to set these up and where to go from here. So for example, this is within database in your prompts, and you have to put a key in there. You have a value category and then a couple of other values there. I believe it actually goes up to export value, maybe 4 or 5. But the category is what we're really going to look at today. You can use any of these as exports in your mailing, but we're going to look at categories. So just kind of keep that in mind. Within the prompt, this category is College of Health and Human Sciences. So you can see that it's not in computer language. It's not any sort of internal language or information like the export value below. We know exactly what this is saying, and everyone can understand it. So looking at the next slide, this is where those content blocks live in Deliver. Again, so when you click on that megaphone at the top, you go to content blocks and you insert something. So you insert your key, really whatever you want that to be. You insert your value. And then the very first thing is that it's going to it's going to also ask you to put a default one. So I didn't show that step here, but you can put a default one kind of if nothing applies to that content block, a default one for students who maybe don't meet any of that criteria. But this, we're looking at the value of College of Health and Human Services. So again, this value matches what our category was in that prompt. So if that is my category, this is the copy that I want to display. So again, we're still in content blocks. We're not in the Deliver mailing yet. We're setting this up. So if you go to the next slide, we're looking at now the export, adding the export within the Deliver mailing. So I'm going to add the export of the inquiry undergraduate program there. And that is an actual export that I have in my system. But then my export value that I'm changing is to category. So the default is just going to be the regular one, but I want this field to pull from whatever is listed in that prompt category. So that's what we're matching up here. And then the following slide is once you're in the Deliver mailing, this is where you would put that in. So you see we have our inquiry program on the right-hand side for that export that we've configured to tell us, look at our content block and give me the category that matches, and then the content that actually is going to be displayed. So if we were to look at an example of this email, it is actually pulling you see high preferred, and then we open up the curly brackets and we are pulling in our actual export and then pulling the snippet. And then our key is the test program UG. So we're telling this whole deliver mailing, I want you to pull from this key. And then depending on what program and that prompt category is on that student's file, insert the appropriate content block for that. So again, this is most useful if you have a large amount of text. You also can style content blocks. So you can put images or, links, color styling, anything, any sort of design elements that you want in here. We always suggest looking, especially if it's new content blocks and not just small updates, definitely test every single one of those categories or export values that you're looking at sending within your deliver mailing. But this is just a great way to organize it so that maybe you want to keep the mailing running, but you need to edit something in the content block. You can actually, if a mailing is using a content block, you don't have to stop the mailing and restart or do anything fancy like that. You can simply go to the content block and update from there.
To chat a little bit about another area that is worth spending some time diving into, and again, could easily be spent more than just a few minutes here, is actually inbox and sort of the tale of two inboxes. We have a lot of partners who maybe use one and not the other, and the one usually being just SMS inbox. I first want to clarify that there are two inboxes within Slate, and they have very similar names, which makes it challenging sometimes. We have SMS inbox is one of them, and we have Slate inbox, which is another one. So, as I said, very similar. Slate inbox is really what you want to be using. As you can see here, the SMS inbox, which we know a lot of partners still use, obviously was deprecated in 2017, which is unbelievably 5 years ago. It's crazy to think about. So disadvantage to, of course, SMS inbox is it's very cluttered. It's very disorganized. We don't have any mailings here to show you in terms of what that cluttered looks like, but for anybody who uses it, you've got long lists of mailings. It's hard to see which ones have been answered, resolved. So we recommend, first and foremost, making the switch to Slate inbox, if time permits. We really, really encourage that. That is its own module within Slate, so it's next to the Deliver Megaphone. So to the right of that is inbox. And there's a lot of advantages. We're just going to speak to one today to show you how you can keep things clean. The best feature within inbox is the ability to resolve messages. I'll preface this by saying when you resolve a message, it doesn't disappear forever. It mainly goes to another folder that just helps keep you, the user, organized. So you can see here on that sort of top right section that we have that blue bar with the drop-down menu. Can't really see the drop-down here, but there are three main ones to keep in mind. You have the option to send, which is basically just to reply. You have the option to resolve, which is to mark as complete and send off to outer space. And you have send and resolve, which does both of those things. A use case for each. If you're texting with a student, and we'll keep this to texting here for now. If you're texting with a prospective student and they ask a question, did you get my transcript? And you reply yes, you just hit send. You can hit send because maybe there's going to be a follow-up question. But sending it will just send the message. However, if a student is already having a conversation with you and they reach out and just say, thanks so much, have a great day, you don't necessarily need to answer that. You can just hit resolve. And what that does is it just marks the conversation resolved and that disappears from your view. Again, it still exists, but it sort of declutters itself. You can also do both of those things. If you are the one saying have a nice day and you know that that's likely to be the last part of that conversation, type your message, have a nice day. And if you hit send and resolve, message sends to the student, and then the message disappears from you, the user's perspective. A couple other notes here. If you think a message is all done and you're good to go, but something pops back in from that student later, great. That just pops back into inbox for you to see again. So these don't disappear. This is purely a way to keep organized. So that's the message you see here in our inbox delivery is Slate Inbox is great for keeping organized. We really encourage making that switch if you haven't already. You can, of course, use Inbox for more than texting. It's great for all sorts of mailings within Deliver and within Slate in general.
Awesome. Down to the final two. So on to the next, refreshes. So really just wanted to take a moment to talk about some best practices here. So this may be a concept that you are somewhat familiar with, and maybe you are an institution that keeps your mailings running, year over year, or you stop, update, and then restart that same mailing. So a couple of things to keep in mind. We do recommend, of course, choose an appropriate time of year for this. I know on the undergraduate side, we typically see kind of this summertime, June, July time frame to really kind of switch and say, okay, everything that was senior search, at least for this cycle, the fall 22 kids are out and the fall 23 students become seniors. And so we kind of restart those campaigns, refresh that for the upcoming year. First thing really to look at technically is, are your campaigns still running? Because we do suggest stopping your emails within your campaigns that you're refreshing. So for instance, if you have a senior search campaign going right now, we suggest that you do put a stop date on those campaigns so that it's really kind of prompts you to have them stop, look at those mailings to refresh. Because what we're actually going to do is copy those mailings over and then refresh and send them freshly to our new population. So the very first one that I opened with, talking about those naming conventions with populations and population rules, comes into play here. So we'll stop all of our mailings for that population, inactivate our population rule. Then we will remove all students from the population through a retroactive refresh. And if you have additional questions, reach out. Our team is happy to help. We take care of this for our partners on the communication side. And then you would edit that population rule and the name and the appropriate filters to bring in those new students. So you'd bring in your new entry term. Maybe you're deciding that in your application generation campaign, you had freshmen and transfer and international students in that one population. And you've looked at kind of your end of campaign reports or just kind of your final numbers for that year, and you've decided that you want to split those markets out into their own campaign. Then make sure you're adjusting your student types, anything like that. And then once you're ready for the new campaign to launch, you would activate the population rule the day before your launch date so that when using those population timestamp days, you're able to send that first email on day one for a student. So again, definitely could probably talk about refreshes for a long time, but just some best practices there. Really, the drive home point is to stop them at some point and copy them over and start them again for the new class.
And then last but not least, tip number 10 is about reporting. And before I dive into this one, I just want to acknowledge that a lot of the tips we have here really aren't just within Deliver. And I think that's something that Amanda and I really like about the work we do with the communications team, is that Deliver touches basically all the modules. And I think reporting is a really big one to pair with it. Amanda mentioned at the beginning, keeping things nice and organized so that your reporting is done well later. Here we are, we've gone full circle. So I'm just going to share 3 different types of reports that Amanda and I really use pretty much every day in the work that we do. The first of which is the funnel and conversions report. This is one that, as the name would suggest, is tracking your funnel. This is great for, I think, especially, maybe, constituents who aren't in Slate as much, but want to know really high level information. Directors, VPs, presidents. This is where you can go in and show your whole funnel for first year, transfer, graduate, any different types of populations, and look at a sort of year-to-date view of applications. You can look at your prospects, inquiries, submitted and completed apps, all the way to your admits, deposits, and your net. So this is a really powerful tool within Slate, and definitely something that we encourage partners to use. Second is probably the one Amanda and I use most frequently, and this is actually a message mailings report. all the work you did at the beginning to name things and create that structure, it pays off now because it allows you to have really nice organized reports. This particular one is looking at a yield campaign. You can break down your mailings and look at their open rates, click rates. You can look at your overall net deposits within the campaign compared to your non-campaign students, yield rate, melt rate, etc. So these reports are pretty ubiquitous for the Slate optimization team. This is something we work on frequently. So again, definitely reach out if you are interested in any of these. And then one that I would call up and coming is the ping report. This is also going back to something Amanda mentioned with ping and UTM, that there's becoming more and more interest in seeing how much students are viewing your website pages. In this particular example, the first two parts are looking at an admissions website, one for inquiries, one for applicants, and that last part is looking at Slate-specific pages. There's no numbers in that last part because this particular institution hasn't yet enabled their ping for Slate pages. So shameless promotion again to do that. But you can see here that we can actually track by link and see how many students have clicked on given pages. A question that we get for reports a lot more and more recently is pesky reports that won't load. We see that a lot. We are, as sort of a Slate optimization team within Carnegie, we've really begun to experiment with ways to get these reports to run differently. And one of them that I won't speak to too much in depth here is actually building those reports within portals. Doing this with configurable joins, bringing in the mailings, looking at them so that they're not running through a report, they're running through a portal. We've had great success with that. So this is something we're really beta testing right now, and we're looking to debut in the coming cycle. So if that's something you're interested in, again, we'd love to partner and sort of show you what we can do. And I guess before we take questions and answers, just a couple of other comments is, we're here for you. Amanda and I do this. We love what we do. We're happy to help, and we're part of this process along with you in our partnership. So basically, if you can think it within Slate, our team can do it. If it's about deliver and communications, that's something Amanda and I would handle. But we have a lot of our colleagues work in different areas of Slate, from consultation, implementations, reporting, enrollment strategy, all kinds of things. So what you see here are just a few of the services that our team offers. But I'll also pause, see, Amanda, if I'm missing anything or if there's any other notes that we should share.
No, I think that's great, Nick. Yeah, please reach out. There's, like Nick said, Deliver, we feel like touches everything. And it's kind of that way, when you're looking at reporting packages or implementation, consultation, anything like that, kind of touches all. As we just have a few moments left, I know we did have a couple of questions that were submitted beforehand. So we'll just maybe do one or two of those before we log off here today. Kind of the burning questions, really. One of which is, how can we best automate email sends in a workflow in Slate? So I'll go ahead and say that this is, of course, use the continue running Maily indefinitely feature. That's great. That's very powerful. That's kind of a set it, make sure your communication flow, you're using that population timestamp days and your days are an appropriate, length apart, but always have a stop date. And that stop date really should align with your refresh timeline and cycle. So allow your campaigns to stop. Something that we do a lot for partners is maybe we stop a campaign, but we send some ad hoc emails to the remainder of the students in the population throughout the summer. Maybe we're sending some of our top performing emails, sending specifically to students who pinged on particular pages or opened at least 4 of our emails, anything like that, to kind of narrow down that recipient list and find those students who really are engaging. Is really, so there's a combination of, yes, let it be automated year round, but you also want to make sure you're still giving those manual touch points, so it doesn't feel totally automated all the time. And then one other one before we wrap up, which I would love your opinion on, Nick, is just best practices for use of liquid markup in emails. Kind of what are some of the additional ways we use liquid markup?
Yeah, and it's a great question too. And I figured there'd be some questions on markup, and it's a lot of fun. So I think, mainly the thing to keep in mind with liquid markup is that first figuring out, is what you're putting down a candidate for markup. Amanda had talked about content blocks. So if you have large chunks of content, maybe content blocks are actually a better fit. Liquid markup is great if you are trying to conditionally show things that maybe the formatting could be a little obscure. So for bullet points, we think liquid markup is much better than using just plain old conditional logic within Slate. So that's something to keep in mind, is liquid markup really helps preserve that formatting. I think in general too, with markup, we would recommend thinking of it in terms of making your life easier for pieces of the funnel. So, instead of creating two separate emails, one for your senior prospects and one for your senior inquiries, maybe you have markup on your buttons on the bottom. And, one set of students receives a button that says apply now, and one receives a button that says learn more. Similarly, you could do this for transfer versus first year. Maybe you have a different visit landing page for each. You can have markup that says, visit our freshman visit page for one and visit our transfer page for the other. And finally, you might consider it for international students. Maybe you don't want to give them information on the FAFSA because that won't be relevant for them. You could very simply have a sentence about filling out the FAFSA for your domestic students, but then just have that statement conditionally hide for an international student who it won't be relevant for if they're not a U.S. citizen. So there are a lot of ways to approach it. And again, I'd say the knowledge base article is a really superb way to get started with all of the different options. But we think that baby step of, the if field is yes, show or hide is a good way to start.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I definitely think liquid markup we could both talk about all day long, and kind of the different ways to use that with call to actions in different campaigns. But we will go ahead and wrap it up for the day. So thank you so much for joining us. Hope you learned something. Please reach out. Again, my name is Amanda Johnson and Nick Porcella as well. And we're happy to answer any follow-up questions you may have and partner with you in the future.
Thanks, everyone.